My name is Eleanor Patterson. I'm 74 years old and I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I never thought that at my age I would have to face a situation like this, but sometimes life surprises us in ways we could never imagine. This is the story of how I discovered that my grandson's fiancée was plotting to steal the $1 million inheritance he was supposed to receive on his 25th birthday. Before we continue, leave a comment below letting us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the Vintage Vengeance Stories channel. We're building a community of amazing women who know that our best chapters in life can happen at any age. Now back to the story. It all started 2 years ago when my dear grandson Michael, who was 23 at the time, introduced me to his girlfriend Rebecca. She was a pretty young woman, blonde, with piercing blue eyes and a smile that seemed a little too charming to be real. From the very first moment, something inside me felt unsettled. Maybe it was my grandmother's intuition, sharpened by decades of caring for my family, but there was something in the way she glanced around my house, evaluating each piece of antique furniture, every painting on the walls. Michael was head over heels in love. My grandson had always been kind-hearted and trusting, maybe even a little too naive for the harsh world out there. He had just graduated in engineering and landed an excellent job with a construction company. Rebecca claimed she was a law student, but every time I asked about her studies she always avoided going into detail. What Michael didn't know was that I carried a constant concern about the inheritance he would one day receive. My late husband, Robert, had been a very wise man when it came to business. He invested in real estate and stocks throughout his entire life, and when he passed away 5 years ago he left behind a trust fund for our only grandson. That trust had grown to more than $1 million, and Michael would have full access to the money once he turned 25, just 6 months away. I was the only one who knew the exact details of the will, because my husband had appointed me as the trustee until Michael reached financial maturity. I never revealed the precise amount to anyone, not even to my own son, Michael's father. I always believed that too much money too early in life could corrupt a young soul. But Rebecca seemed to know something. Her questions always circled around the family, our past, and how successful in business my husband had been. On the surface, she asked in a sweet, innocent way, but I could see how calculating she was as she processed every bit of information. The first real warning sign came during Thanksgiving last year. Rebecca had offered to help me in the kitchen, and while I was busy with the turkey, I noticed her rifling through a stack of documents I had left on the office table. As soon as I walked in, she quickly pretended she was just looking for paper napkins. "Sorry, Eleanor," she said with that sweet smile. "I was just trying to find where you keep the napkins." But I had clearly seen her flipping through my personal papers. That night, I discreetly checked, and sure enough, some of my documents were out of order. My suspicion began to grow like a dark seed inside me. Over the next few weeks, I started watching Rebecca more closely. She always found excuses to stay alone in the house whenever Michael had to leave for errands or quick commitments. She would say she wanted to help or keep Grandma company. I let her, but stayed vigilant. It was during one of those occasions that I discovered something truly disturbing. Rebecca had gone to the bathroom but was gone for more than 15 minutes. When I went to check on her, I found the office door slightly open. I walked in quietly and caught her photographing documents with her cell phone. She was so absorbed that she didn't even notice me right away. "Rebecca," I called, feigning surprise. "Is everything all right, dear?" She jumped violently, almost dropping her phone. "Oh, Eleanor, you scared me. I was just—" Michael asked me to grab a pen for him to write something in the car. It was an obvious lie. Michael was at the supermarket and certainly didn't need a pen. But I said nothing. I needed more evidence before confronting her. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every strange little detail I had noticed. How Rebecca always changed the subject when people asked about her family, how she never received calls from relatives or close friends, how she seemed to know exactly what to say to make Michael fall deeper in love with her. I decided to investigate on my own. The next day I called my old friend Dorothy, who had worked at the university library for more than 30 years before retiring. I asked her to discreetly check if there was any record of a Rebecca Thompson enrolled in the law program at the University of South Carolina. Her answer came 2 days later, and it chilled me to the bone. There was no Rebecca Thompson registered in the law school. In fact, there was no record of her being enrolled in any program at the university in the past 5 years. My mind started racing. If Rebecca was lying about being a law student, What else was she lying about? And why was she taking pictures of my personal documents? I decided to take a more drastic step. I hired a private investigator, something I never thought I'd do in my life. But Michael's inheritance was at stake, and I couldn't allow a con artist to take advantage of my grandson's kindness. The investigator, Mr. James Morrison, was a discreet man in his 50s, a former police officer now working in private cases. I explained my situation and he agreed to dig into Rebecca's past. What he discovered over the next 2 weeks shocked me to my core. Rebecca Thompson wasn't even her real name. Her true identity was Rachel Bennett, and she had a history of relationships with wealthy young men. On at least 3 different occasions she had gotten romantically involved with heirs of wealthy families, only to disappear after gaining access to financial information or small sums of money. But this time she had set her sights higher. The investigator found out that she had learned about Michael's inheritance through a source at the accounting firm that managed the trust fund. A junior employee, later fired for breaching client confidentiality, had sold information about several wealthy families in the area. Rebecca's plan was even more elaborate than I imagined. She intended to marry Michael before his 25th birthday, become his legal wife, and then manipulate him into transferring the inheritance into joint accounts as soon as he received it. The investigator even found evidence that she had already consulted lawyers about marital rights and property division. The situation became even more urgent when Michael called me one Thursday night, overjoyed. "Grandma Eleanor, I have amazing news. Rebecca and I are getting married." My heart nearly stopped. "Married? But you two aren't even engaged yet, sweetheart." I know. But she said yes. She wants us to get married soon, before my 25th birthday. She said she doesn't want to wait any longer to start our life together. Isn't that romantic? Romantic wasn't the word I would have chosen. Calculated was far more accurate. Rebecca was speeding up the timeline because she knew Michael would inherit the money in just 2 months. "Michael," I tried to keep my voice calm, "marriage is a very important decision. Maybe the two of you should wait a little longer, get to know each other's families better." "Oh, Grandma, you've always been too cautious," he laughed. "I love Rebecca and she loves me. That's all that matters." That night I knew I had to act quickly. But how could I tell my grandson that the woman he loved was a con artist without sounding like a jealous, controlling grandmother? I decided to gather all the evidence first. The investigator had provided me with photographs of documents, records of Rebecca, in past relationships, and even recordings of conversations she had with a friend about the big fish she had finally caught. The moment of truth came the following Sunday. As usual, Michael brought Rebecca over for Sunday lunch. She seemed particularly cheerful, talking about wedding plans and how wonderful it would be to start a new life with my grandson. "Rebecca," I said once we had finished eating, or should I say, Rachel. The silence in the dining room was deafening. Rebecca turned pale, though she quickly tried to compose herself. "Excuse me, Eleanor, I don't think I understand." Michael looked from her to me, confused. "Grandma, what are you talking about?" I stood up calmly and went to fetch the folder with all the evidence the investigator had gathered. I placed it on the dining table. Rachel Bennett, born in Detroit, Michigan. 3 previous relationships with young men from wealthy families. 1 arrest for fraud in 2019, released on bail. I opened the folder and began showing photographs and documents. Never studied law. Worked as a waitress and in telemarketing. Rebecca, or Rachel, was now visibly trembling. "This is ridiculous. Eleanor, you're making things up." "Michael," I continued, looking straight at my grandson, whose face showed a mixture of confusion and growing horror, "she knows about your inheritance. She knows you'll receive more than $1 million when you turn 25. That's why she wants to marry you before your birthday." "That's not true," Rebecca shouted, leaping to her feet. "Michael, you're not going to believe these lies your grandmother is telling, are you? She's always been jealous of our relationship." But Michael was staring at the evidence on the table. There were photographs of Rachel with other men, police documents, even screenshots of conversations where she spoke about getting the money and leaving town. "Rebecca," Michael said with a trembling voice, "is this true? Is your name not really Rebecca?" The next moment was pure tension. Rachel realized her game was over. Her expression changed completely. The sweet, innocent smile vanished. replaced by a cold, calculated stare that sent shivers down my spine. "You," she spat, pointing at me angrily, "you had no right to stick your nose into my life. Michael and I love each other." "Love," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You love his money, not him. If you truly loved him, you wouldn't be lying about who you are." Michael sat in shock, holding one of the documents. It was a transcript of a phone call where Rachel had said, "The idiot doesn't suspect a thing. As soon as I get access to the money, I'll disappear. $1 million is worth a few months of pretending to love a boring engineer." You really said that?" Michael whispered, his voice broken. Rachel knew she could no longer deny it. Her mask finally fell. "So what if I did? Do you really think anyone would care about you if it weren't for the money? You're just an ordinary guy, Michael. Boring. No personality. But yes, I would have played my part. I would have been a good wife, until I got what I wanted." Her words hit Michael like blows. I had never seen my grandson so wounded, so devastated. Tears began streaming down his face. "Leave," he said quietly. "Michael." "Leave," he shouted, his voice echoing through the house. "Get out of my house. Get out of my life." Rachel snatched her purse with jerky movements and stormed toward the door. Before leaving, she turned to me with a look of pure hatred. "You ruined everything," she hissed. "He'll never be able to trust another woman after this. Congratulations, Eleanor. You've guaranteed your grandson will be alone forever." And with that, she slammed the door so hard the frames on the walls rattled. Michael collapsed into the armchair, covering his face with his hands. I sat beside him and held him just like I used to when he was a little boy. "Why, Grandma?" he sobbed. "Why would someone do this? I really loved her." "I know, sweetheart. I know you did. And that's why it hurts so much." We spent the rest of the afternoon talking. I explained to Michael about the trust fund, about the details of the inheritance his grandfather had left him, and about my decision to keep it a secret until now. "Your grandfather was a wise man," I told him. "He knew money could be either a blessing or a curse, depending on how it was used and who knew about it. That's why he set the fund for when you turn 25. He believed by then you would be mature enough to handle the responsibility." Michael looked at me with eyes red from crying. "How did you know? How did you figure out who she really was?" I told him about my suspicions, the investigation, and all the little clues I had collected over the months. "A grandmother always knows when something isn't right with the people we love," I said softly. "It was my duty to protect you, even if it meant breaking your heart." In the weeks that followed, Michael went through a very dark time. He questioned everything: his ability to judge people, his trust in future relationships, even whether he deserved the inheritance at all. But gradually, with the support of family and a few sessions with a counselor, he began to heal. He realized he had been the victim of a very sophisticated manipulation, and that it was no reflection of his own worth or character. 2 months later, on his 25th birthday, Michael officially gained access to the trust fund. But the very first thing he did was come to me. "Grandma," he said, "I want you to continue managing part of this money. I don't fully trust myself yet, and you've proven that you'll always protect our family's best interests." Together, we decided to invest most of the money conservatively, using only a small portion so Michael could buy a house and establish his financial independence. But the story didn't end there. About 6 months after the incident with Rachel, we received an unexpected call from the investigator, Mr. Morrison. "Eleanor," he said over the phone, "you need to know something. Rachel Bennett was arrested yesterday in Atlanta. Apparently, she had tried to pull the same scam on another young heir, but this time the family uncovered her plans earlier. She was charged with fraud, identity falsification, and attempted extortion. There's one more thing," the investigator continued. "During the investigation, police discovered she was part of a larger network. At least 5 other women were running similar schemes in different states. Your report helped dismantle the entire operation." Michael was silent when I told him about Rachel's arrest. Finally, he said, "I'm glad she won't be able to do this to anyone else." Today, 2 years after the incident, Michael is doing much better. He's still cautious with relationships but no longer paranoid. Last month, he met a young schoolteacher named Sarah, and for the first time since Rachel, I saw him genuinely smile when talking about a woman. "This time," he told me last week, "I'm going to introduce her to you slowly. And if your grandmother's intuition tells you something is wrong, I'll listen. I smiled at him. Your own intuition is sharper now, dear. Trust yourself, but always keep your eyes open. The inheritance has continued to grow under our careful investments, and Michael now uses part of the returns to support a non-profit organization that helps young people who've fallen victim to financial fraud and romance scams. If my experience can help others avoid what I went through, he said, then at least something good came out of all this. As for me, I've learned that sometimes protecting the people we love requires making difficult, even unpopular decisions. There were moments when I questioned myself, wondered if I was being unfair to Rachel, if I was interfering too much in my grandson's life. But when I look at Michael now, wiser, stronger, and still capable of love and trust despite everything he endured, I know I made the right choice. A grandmother's intuition is something powerful. It's built on decades of love, observation, and the instinctive need to protect those we hold most dear. On that Thanksgiving day when I caught Rachel rifling through my papers, every fiber of my being told me something was wrong. And thanks to that intuition, I was able to save my grandson from a betrayal that could have destroyed not only his financial future but also his ability to trust and love. Sometimes being family means being the villain in the story for a while, so that in the end, everyone can have a truly happy ending. And if I had to do it all over again, I would make the exact same choices. Because at the end of the day, nothing matters more than protecting the people we love, even when they don't realize they need protecting. This is the story of how I destroyed my grandson's wedding to save him from a con artist who wanted to steal his $1 million inheritance. And I don't regret it for a single moment. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this story made you reflect, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more real, intense stories like this one. Because in the end, every story is an opportunity to see life through new eyes.